My name is Chad Trujillo. I'm in marketing with the Learning House. I work with e-learning essentials and e-learning complete schools, and I also manage most of our email marketing strategies for our schools across the board and a little bit of our corporate marketing. My co-presenter is Rachel Rewerts with Delivra, and I will let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Chad. Like Chad said, my name is Rachel Rewerts. I am with Delivra, and Delivra is the Learning House's email service provider vendor. So we help get those email messages out, among other things. Delivra's been in business for 12 years. We've been helping companies design, strategize, and deploy emails for that time. I have been with Delivra for 3 years. I've been in an account management role for about that long, and I've been working in email for about 5 years. So I'm pretty passionate about email. I'm excited to hear the questions that you guys have as we go through this presentation. So I think Chad's going to tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about.
Basically, what today's discussion will cover is, I kind of refer to it as a 10,000-foot view of email marketing, from your best practices to tips and a few tricks along the ways, your basics, essentially your basics. We will talk about campaign planning, your database, how to grow it, the best things you can do with it, how to segment that database so you can better speak to your audience, personalization of your messaging, sequencing of your messaging, and finally something that we kind of do all along the way is testing and optimization of your messaging as you create and work with new campaigns. And Rachel is actually going to get us started with campaign planning.
And just so you know, as we go through, if you have questions as we go through the different sections, please feel free to stop us. I'll kind of check in every once in a while, make sure everyone is still awake after I know we all had some sugar. So hopefully we don't have a sugar crash. So the first thing you want to ask yourself when we're talking about campaign planning is, what are you seeking to accomplish? So a lot of times I get questions like, what's a good average, or what's a good open rate, or what's a good click-through rate? And those are good indicators of success, but that's not really what you're trying to accomplish, right? You're not necessarily just trying to get people to open your emails. You want them to do something. So, you know, there could be a few different things you're trying to do. So you could be trying to create awareness, generate leads, build loyalty, move alumni from alumni to donors. So remember that your ultimate goal when you're planning is conversion, okay? The next thing you want to think about is, who is your audience? So who are you trying to reach? We're going to talk a little bit about segmenting that audience, but first you need to think about kind of that 10,000-foot view, like Chad said. So, you know, you have prospects, you have fans and followers, and you have influencers like alumni, right? The next thing you want to plan out when you're planning your campaign is, what is your call to action? So what do you want people to do? Don't get into the habit of sending out email just to send out email. There should be something happening with that email. If nothing else, it's driving traffic back to your website, right? It could be to announce a new product, a course, program, or it could be to attend an event. So make sure there's something tangible, something measurable, so that when you go back and look at that hard work that you put into the email campaign, that you can see if it was successful or not. The next thing to think about is your campaign time frame. So when you're doing this plan, make sure and think, okay, is this just a one-time email? Is this going to be a weekly email that I'm sending out, monthly, quarterly, and also kind of put in your plan, you know, what day of the week is it going out? What's the time? So that when you go back and evaluate your results, you can see what days are working well for you or what times are working well for you. You know, something to keep in mind, lastly here, as we talk about campaign planning, is your campaign should be fluid. So sure, you want to plan out the next, you know, maybe few weeks or few months, or, you know, or as far in advance as you can, but keep some buffer room in there. So when something urgent comes up, you haven't just, you know, you can send out the next email and not be afraid that your timeline is just too crunched together. The other thing to keep in mind is, email is great because it's immediate, right? So as soon as you send out that campaign, you can see exactly what you need to do next. So that's why your campaign should be fluid, so that you can make those changes, because email gives you that capability.
Something that we've dealt with at Learning House that we've learned to sort of work around is, say you're going to send out something that's specific to a month. So it might have July throughout the entire message. If you build a little bit of time on the front and the back of that, so that you're not going to send it out at the very end of the month of July, but perhaps something comes up, as it usually does, and we have to bump that to August. You don't have to go in and necessarily rework or recreate all of that content and frame it for August. So if you've got a little bit of a buffer, that's just potentially less work for you to do when something does come up and you've got to make that change.
The next thing we're going to talk about is growing your database. And I have to say this is one of my most exciting this is what makes me so excited about email, is growing that database. If one thing you kind of take away from this as we talk about growing your database is, email is not a numbers game. So before, it was just about sending as much email as you could to as many people as you could. And email has transitioned to being, all about content. So sending the right content to the right person at the right time. So keep that in mind as we talk about growing your database. We're not just talking about growing your database just for the sake of growing it. We want to grow it with engaged members. So one of the first places to start when we talk about growing is your current subscribers and your current, fans of your brand. So, one thing you want to make sure is in all of your emails, you want to have a way for that email to be shared. So whether that's with their social media, whether that's through forwarding that email to a friend or referring it to a friend, you want to make that very prominent and an easy way for people to share that content. That's a great way to organically grow your list. You also want to use your Facebook page. So there are a couple different ways you can use your Facebook page here. One is having a sign up directly on your Facebook page. So that people can sign up for your email. But a lot of times you need to offer something. So that's when we talk about promoting offers or, giving something in return for signing up. You just want to be really clear that if you are running a contest on Facebook and you're collecting those email addresses, make sure you're very transparent with those potential subscribers that they're going to be receiving email from you, so that there isn't any confusion when they get that email from you. The last thing when we talk about current subscribers is traditional marketing campaign prospects. So those people that you're sending direct mail to, give them the option to opt into email as well. So that could be a link, it could be a QR code, and make sure that you also give them the opportunity to opt out of direct mail, because we all know how expensive direct mail is, especially when we're talking about, and comparing that to email marketing. Now we're going to talk about acquiring new email subscribers. So we had, I think a lot of you were in the presentation before this about SEO. So now that you've got all these great people to your website, you want to convert them. You want to get them engaged, right? And so a great way to do that is make sure you have a prominent, ever-present email sign up on your website. You'll probably have to offer something in turn for their email address. And so we talked about that a little bit in the last presentation as well. So create a value-based lead gen offer, like a white paper or an ebook. Maybe it's an online contest. Host online webinars, but again, you want to be very clear about permission. You want to be very transparent that it isn't just for getting this ebook. We're also going to be sending you marketing messages as well. And then, another thing you want to think about is taking advantage of those offline events. So trade shows, in person, so things exactly like this. And we actually have a very fun interactive thing that we're going to do in just a minute. So when you're at events like this, you have the potential to gather a lot of email addresses. And a lot of times that's a manual process, right? So you're at an event and you have a booth and people put in business cards or they write down their email address. And then you have to go back and manually put those in. So one of the things that we offer and that the Learning House has the ability to do is something called text to subscribe. This is a text to subscribe message that we sent out. We went to a conference in Atlanta a couple of months ago, and so everyone that was in our event, we encouraged them to text to sign up to receive email alerts from us. When they do that, they also get a white paper for doing that. And so that's what we're going to do next. So if everyone will get out their phone, and I'll explain exactly how it works. And just to be clear, when you do text, this isn't for text messaging, this is for email sign up from the Learning House. So everyone will need to text learning to 71813, and you're going to get this great infographic about mobile email marketing. We also talked about infographics in the last session as well, talking about why mobile email marketing is important. So learning to 71813, it's going to come back with a text that says, please put in your email address. Once you put in your email address, then you have signed up. And then this is the welcome email that you're going to receive, and we actually triggered it to go out about an hour after this. So we didn't want people reading over the infographic while we're presenting. So you'll get that in your inbox in about an hour. So.
And for any Learning House employees that already are in our corporate Learning House email marketing database, it won't change anything, but you will not receive this message
if you're an admin on the list.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which I don't. We may have one or two.
Yeah. But it's a really great, effective way to get people to sign up, and it's easy and it's immediate, right? Because one of the biggest obstacles about collecting email addresses at an event like this is then you have to go back, and that's one other thing that you have to do when you get back to the office is put in all these email addresses. And the longer you wait to email these folks, they're just going to forget that they stopped by or that they signed up. So you want that immediate response. Any questions before I get into this last slide about growing your database, whether it's about growing your database or campaign planning? Yeah. Ooh, we're going to talk about that. Yes, we are. Yep. So one of the things that's really important about Delivra and about what we do is that we are permission-based email marketers. So what that means is, in order for you to send massive email through our system, they have to be opted in. They have to have signed up directly with you to receive information from you. And I'm going to explain a little bit why when we talk about why I worry about this. But so when we talk about purchasing or renting email lists, we do not recommend it. There are other providers that will do that for you. However, I will be completely transparent. I haven't had a client yet that has done that has had great success with it. It's usually a huge investment, and a lot of times it's just hard to vet those companies out and know if it's going to be successful for you. And you have to be careful because, especially if they're using your name, your domain, that could ultimately have an effect on your reputation. So you want to be extremely, extremely cautious when renting or purchasing lists. Another common question is list of pins. So that means you have mailing address information, and there are companies out there that will try and find their email addresses. A lot of the times those aren't correct either. So you just want to be very cautious. I know there are companies out there that can do it, but again, just be extremely cautious when looking into those. Another thing you want to keep in mind is trade show list rentals or inclusions. So sometimes when you go to trade shows or events, they say, here's the list of attendees, please, feel free to email them. They're expecting it. And they may or may not be expecting it, and it's kind of spam or spammy, and they may complain about you and say, I didn't sign up to receive this. So you want to be, that's another thing that we don't recommend sending through our system, just because we see a high failure rate and a high complaint rate, which can cause a lot of issues for you in the future when it comes to getting email delivered in the inbox. So when you go to those trade shows, when you email people, you only want to email people that have explicitly signed up to receive your information when they come to your booth.
And Rachel,
yep.
Failure rates we strive to keep below 30%, and complaints below 0.03%.
Complaints are 0.3%. Failure rates, the lower the better. So yeah, 30%. I mean, if you have a good email list, I don't expect to see a double-digit failure rate. Anytime we get close to 30%, that makes me think something's up, and these email addresses are not valid. Time since collection. So I work with some education clients kind of outside of the Learning House as well, and I will tell you that this is a big issue for them. Is a lot of times people say, well, I have this email list. I don't know how old it is, and it's just been kind of sitting here. Can I email them? And you have to be really careful because typically, the stat that we use is 1 in 3 email addresses after 12 months is invalid. And so if you have an email list that is 2 years or 3 years old, most likely those are a lot of bad email addresses, and I wouldn't recommend sending to them. If you have a lot of them, there are strategies that we can help companies put in place to test those out, so that you can see if they are still good, and do something that we call an opt-in campaign. Another big one is affiliate emails. So you want to be really careful, especially on the education side, of cross-promoting, brands or programs. You want to make sure that they understand why they're receiving this email. So if they've signed up to receive something else from you for a specific program, and you're sending them an email about another program, be very, very clear how they signed up in the first place. It could just be, text in the bottom of the email that just says, you signed up to receive information from Acme University, and this is why you're receiving this email. Just be very, very clear, because that's another way that you could also lose subscribers that way as well. So why worry about these? So I'm sure, or maybe you have heard about, blacklisting IP addresses. Basically, that just means ISPs like, Comcast or Yahoo will say, I've gotten a lot of complaints on you, so I'm going to stop any emails coming from your domain. But in this day and age, it's really gone beyond that. So ISPs like Gmail and Yahoo, they're looking at engagement. So they're looking at when people get your email, are they opening it? Are they clicking on it? Because if they're not, they're probably not interested. And oh yeah, you have a lot of emails that are going to people that don't really want to receive it. So we're going to send your emails to the spam box moving forward. So you have to keep that in mind when you're sending emails. Again, email is not a numbers game. It's about sending relevant content to people who want to receive it. So if you're just batching and blasting, you're probably missing the mark with the majority of those people and hurting your reputation in the long run. So you want to keep that in mind. Now that I've officially scared everyone, we'll talk about database segmentation.
Database segmentation is essentially a way for you to take your database, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people or 5,000 people, and speak to them more intelligently. Speak to them about something that they've expressed an interest in or have shown some reason to you that they may be interested in something that they've pulled out of a broad original message to them. So that was a little bit about what it is, but let's talk about what you could do with a group or a group of data that you've already got, that you've maybe been working with, but you've not done any segmentation for. The demographics. So you may want to speak to a certain group within 50 miles, let's say, of your institution, a little bit differently than you would a group that maybe are not within 50 miles of your institution. That's an example with the geographic segmentation. The program. This is a very easy one for us to all kind of grasp. You know, if you've got some expressed interest in a specific program, when you speak to this group of members from your database in the future going forward, you can speak to them about something that they've clearly expressed an interest in before. And then there's action-based. Within your current email program, let's say it's an e-newsletter that you send out on a regular basis, actions that are taken within that email, you can speak to them differently moving forward. You don't necessarily have to speak to them about the same thing or speak to everyone about the same thing as you move forward. You can just begin to sort of form these individual databases from your original large piece of data and speak to them on a more personalized and intelligent level. Same goes with the prospect funnel. Where are they? If you've talked to them 10 times, you may be able to talk to them at this point about something a little differently than someone who is maybe receiving the same message, but they're receiving it for the first time or the second time. You can sort of drive them somewhere differently at this point in the game, so to speak. And obviously here you craft your message and your call to action to speak to each segment. We all receive these things in the mail, in our personal email and our professional email that speak to us, hopefully, on a level that is engaging to us and sort of allows us to view that sender with a higher level of trust than someone who is rattling off the same thing every time and you're a part of a gigantic group. Couple of interesting stats here. Segmented emails generate an 8% click-through rate compared to general sends, which generate just a 3% click-through rate. That's from HubSpot. And another one here from Juniper Research. Relevant or segmented emails drive 18 times more revenue than broadcast emails. That's huge. And segmenting is not something that's easy to do necessarily. It's simple in theory. It's not the easiest thing to do, and that's why the majority of marketers don't take advantage of it or don't attempt to move down that path. And it's not a super quick process. It's something that does involve time and does involve a lot of work from a data and an analytics standpoint. The benefits to segmenting your database. Increased open rates because, as I mentioned before, you eventually become viewed as a more trusted source. You're speaking to someone about something that they have expressed interest in. Better deliverability, this is long term. That kind of falls hand in hand with increased open rates. You're going to get into an inbox easier and more successfully over time because you are, as I just mentioned, a more trusted source. Your spam complaints go down. Your opt-outs and your unsubscribe rates also go down. And ultimately, with conversions and ideally, your leads are increased. This is a stat that was, I believe, general across marketers that work with email across the board, but when asked to indicate top 3 results, 39% of marketers who segmented their database experienced higher open rates, 28% experienced lower unsubscribes, and 24% experienced better deliverability into the inbox and greater revenue. Those are some pretty impressive numbers when databases can be segmented in the correct way. And again, that's something that takes time. I mean, and you may have something to chime in here as far as what really needs to be devoted and understood as far as how fast these results can be expected.
segmentation. What we're really, there are a couple different types of segmentation. So I know that Chad mentioned, demographic, but also engagement. So sometimes you don't have access to demographic data in order to segment. And so then what you really have to do is start segmenting based on actions within the email. And so you start sending the email, and then you can segment based on, if someone is truly engaged, so they've clicked through, they've went around the website, so they're truly engaged, versus someone maybe who just opened the email but didn't click through, versus those that aren't opening the email at all. And then, those are three really powerful segments that you can do a lot with. So don't confuse, I guess, segmentation with demographic data. You don't have to have that demographic data in order to segment and make a powerful impact.
Personalization is something that is very easy to do, but if you've also got data that's been segmented, you can kind of take it to a higher level or to a greater level. And a lot of this is something we can all sort of identify with, because I think a lot of us receive personalized emails on a regular basis. You think about something that comes to you and it refers to you or identifies you by your name. On kind of a business-to-business level, it's often going to be your last name, or maybe as a member of a group. So perhaps it's an alumni group, something like that. It'll identify you. On a little more of a B2C level, it's a lot of first names. It may be more of a hi or a hello versus a dear. But moving deeper into it, you can truly personalize your message. And here again, it ties into segmentation. If you have segmented data, you can personalize your message even more. So for example, I mentioned this earlier, a program or an area of interest. This is a great example that Delibera uses, where I believe this is an introduction to an account manager?
So our marketing, we have 4 account managers at Delibera, and so our marketing team puts together this email, and instead of putting together 4 different emails, they put in what we call dynamic content. So if your account manager is me, for example, then my image, my email address, my phone number, that all pops up. And where I see other education clients using this is admissions. So they get that really powerful impact. So you just hung up the phone or you just talked to someone. It puts a face with a name, which I think can be really powerful. And it really makes them think, oh, this is the person I'm talking to. This is a very personal touch. But yeah, I mean, it's a great, efficient way for marketers to get the message out there and to use personalization.
And where we talk about having all the necessary data that you want to have. If you want to address someone by their first name, you want to hopefully have most of your first names in that list of your data. But if you don't, you just need a backup plan. So let's say you want to address them by first name, but if you don't, you want something that's going to work and be fluid. So perhaps it's going to say, dear future Acme University student, instead of identifying them by name, if this is a group of prospects, just so that they don't receive in their inbox an email that says, dear first name, where clearly you didn't have a piece of information. That kind of works against you as quickly as it can work for you. Benefits of personalization. You definitely get a better first impression than most of your competition because you have personalized something. Your attention is gained naturally, kind of goes hand in hand with a better first impression, a better foot in the door, but most importantly, a better and more powerful way to create and reinforce the bond between your brand and your target. And we've talked a lot about brands, that we all are part of a brand and we identify with a brand in these breakout sessions, and it's very true. And this is a great way to strengthen that and that connection between the brand. And then there's psychological factors, just like I mentioned, with perhaps a broken email that's been personalized, dear first name. That's going to carry something and kind of ring with you. You're not going to think so great about that sender who actually delivered that to your inbox. Whereas if it is addressing you by your first name and perhaps it's personalized even down to a program level, that's gonna hopefully drive you to want to open future sends from that sender. And obviously it makes you more efficient as a marketer if you're able to work through all of these pieces of personalization successfully.
Sequencing. So sequencing basically it's an extension of both your campaign planning, right? So this is something that you want to keep in mind when you're planning your campaign. And it's also... Yeah.
The mics work.
Okay, so I guess I don't really need the graphic. I think you all know what a flow chart looks like, right? So a sequence is just a series of emails based on some sort of action or inaction, right? And so in this example, it was for a hotel, but I think you could understand and apply it to your world as well. So basically, there's an initial email that's sent out, and there are 3 possible reactions or non-reactions that could happen. So one, you could book. So you could have the conversion that you want. Second would be there was some sort of engagement. So you made it to the website, but you didn't book. And then third was you didn't do anything with the email at all. So if you booked, you were out of the sequence, right? Because you've met our goal, so we don't want to bug you and send you any more email. The second one, that's the group that you really want to target the most because those are your engaged people. So you want to have some sort of plan to set up that immediate response. And so that should be set up ahead of time so that when they have that action and then they abandon that action and then a certain time goes after that and then they receive their follow-up email saying, hey, don't forget. A study, and I can't quote it, the name of the study, but there's a 20% conversion rate when you send that reactive email. So when you say, don't forget about this, you have a higher conversion rate than obviously if you do nothing at all. And then the non-booking folks, we're going to send them, typically we send them something with a different subject line. So someone that didn't, non-booking, I meant non-open. So the people that didn't open the email at all, we're going to send them something with a totally different subject line that'll hopefully pique their interest in order for them to then open the email. And then that sequence goes on. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so there are 3 different options here, right? So you have booking. Basically, you have the conversion. So when they convert, then I don't want to bug them. I don't want to send them any more email, right? That's not necessarily, at least not in this example. If they abandon their cart, so basically what that means, if they go to the website and they do something, but they don't do exactly what you want them to do, that's where you want to capture those folks and send them some sort of follow-up email. And it doesn't even have to be as advanced as they did something on the website. It could just be that they clicked through to the link that you wanted them to click through, right? Right. Well, yeah, and that's the last group. The last group are people that really didn't do anything. So you could separate this group into 2, like you're saying. So you could have a group that opened it but didn't do anything, and then a group that didn't open it at all. It really depends on your time and resources, right? And so with those people, you want to change up the subject line, you want to change up the offer or the content to get some sort of action out of them. So then down here for the abandoned cart folks, we have a follow-up email that goes out, and then the same 3 actions happen here. And then, maybe we have a stronger offer for that final reminder. And it doesn't have to be this exactly, but any follow-up to those people that are engaged, move those people through the funnel, and that's what you want, right? So why do it? It really leverages the subscriber's interest. So remember what we're talking about, relevant content to the right person at the right time. And this epitomizes that concept, right? And then the other thing is, to kind of keep in mind is when you're planning out something like this, you want to have a full plan. So you want to define the action. So what are they doing or not doing? That's getting them the next email, the timing. So when they click on the email, they click through to the website, and then they don't do this, how much longer until we follow up with them? It may be immediate. That could be a little stalkerish. Or it could be a couple days later as a gentle push, right? And then what do we do with the no action folks? So keep that in mind. The other thing that makes this really helpful is when you do have that real-time data. So if that's all just within the email, if it's just click through versus not click through, that's pretty easy to do. It's very easy to do, and it can be set up in advance. Yeah. Well, if they hit junk, if they hit spam, they actually get unsubscribed from your list. At least that's how it works in most email clients. So if they hit junk, that's technically them complaining about you, and that's them saying to us, we don't want to receive email from these people anymore. So we see that, but you can't follow up with those people. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Or that people saw the unsubscribe. A lot of people just hit spam because they don't scroll down to see the unsubscribe, right? So we know that not all emails going out, all emails are going to have some spam rate. That's just going to happen. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, yeah, I mean, a lot of times that's exactly what it is your email address may have been shared among departments and they're not using an email service provider, and so the information doesn't get passed back and forth, unfortunately. And then, like I said, real-time data, if it's within the email, that makes it really easy. If you are doing some sort of conversion, like they're booking for an event, that could take a little bit more time if your event booking is maybe outside of your email service provider, which most of the time it's going to be, because then you need those people that have converted so you can exclude those from any future mailings. So kind of keep that in mind when you're planning these out. Any questions about this? I know we kind of got broken up a little bit. Very good.
Testing and optimization is something that, as I mentioned in the beginning, we kind of should be doing all the time, from the time you start planning a campaign through all of these steps and processes. And then moving forward, as you create and then kind of mold and sculpt these pieces to work their best for you, you're always testing and you're always optimizing. That font is a lot smaller than I remember. Basic things that you can do that are super easy that a lot of people don't do is just to send your test out to yourself, send it to your colleagues. When you send it to yourself at work, send it to yourself on something like Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo, so you can see what it looks like there. Open it in multiple browsers. Things are inevitably always going to look a lot of times more different than you would think when you view these in these different capacities. Definitely view a mailing on a mobile device. That's the amount of these mailings being viewed on mobile devices has skyrocketed in the last few years. Test and verify your links and your buttons, including unsubscribe. That's one that doesn't get tested a lot because people are scared to test because it's going to, take you out of it or mark you as a no send or a do not send. But it's a very important link to check because if it's broken, you'll be marked as spam. I mean, if someone really wants to get out of it and you don't successfully unsubscribe, they'll definitely mark you as spam. Tags within emails if you're using them, and you should be. As well as when you get down here to checking your images and your tags associated with your images. A lot of times if you open an email, say in Outlook, the default setting is that it's not going to display images. A lot of times you've got to click a button and tell it that you want it to, but there are times and instances where individuals don't want those displayed. You want there to be text associated with these images so that if they don't see them, they still understand what's going on, and the email is still fluid. They understand what the message is you're trying to deliver. A lot of times images may have copy on top of them that's not actually text in your email. If they're not seeing those images, they're not seeing that part of your message. I mean, this is a kind of a silly example, but I had an email recently, I think it was from Starbucks, and there was a sale, and there was a picture of a coffee brewer, and there was text on top of that image, so not actual text, but it was part of the graphic itself that said what it was called, what the sale price was, what the regular price was. When I hovered over that image or where that image wasn't there before I enabled that image, I got all that information. So I didn't have to see that image to understand that. It told me what was in that image and everything that I needed to know in order for that email to make sense and be fluid. There are some very good third-party tools that do have costs associated with them. They're not astronomical. There's one called Email on Acid that allows you to preview your email in 48 variations of your email on the most popular email clients and mobile devices. 48's a pretty solid, strong number. I mean, doing that yourself and figuring that out would be a pretty substantial amount of your time. Litmus is one I know that, Rachel, you use specifically, which is really intriguing because it lets you see, as it says, how, when, and where your email is being read the most. So that helps you optimize moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a great place to start. If you're getting kind of that push to focus on mobile email marketing, first you want to know, is your audience, are they mobile? Are they reading your emails on a mobile device? And Litmus is a great place to start for that. We just did a Litmus test for another client, and we found out that 31% of the people opening the email were opening it on an iPhone. And you better believe that's going to change the way that we design emails for them in the future, right? Because that's a huge percentage. So Litmus really tells you if your audience is mobile. It also tells you what email clients they're on. So if they're people that are opening it, if they're reading it on Outlook 2003 or Outlook 2007, then those are email clients that you want to focus on and make sure your email looks good in those clients. With 48 clients, I'm going to tell you right now, your email is not going to look perfect in all of them, and if you try, you're going to go crazy trying to figure out how to fix it. So just keep in mind that you want to make it look as consistent as possible, but don't get too stuck on that perfect look when you're talking about 48 email clients.
there's the very common split test or A/B test with an email, and there are some very easy and simple ways to do this that can be very beneficial. Subject line is a great place to start. If your subject line isn't going over well, then you're potentially not going to get an open, and that's a good place to start, is to get an open. So you can do a couple different variations of a subject line. You ideally want to remain in the 40, 50, slightly over character neighborhood, because as you open these emails on different devices and different clients, the longer your email is, or the longer your subject line is, the less likely it is that it's going to make any sense, because it's going to get truncated. You're only going to see bits and pieces of it. So the reason I say that there's a potential to make a significant difference in your results is because that's a very powerful piece. If it doesn't go over well, then the rest of your email is dead. Timing. This is a bit of a long-term piece because different industries, certainly timing can play different roles, but it's something to play around with and not to be afraid of. There are sort of ideas out there about bad timing across the board, and I don't think that that's really applicable. You should always play around with timing and see what you have the best results and the best luck with. Images versus text. You can definitely play around and split test with this. You may have more success with some text about a certain thing instead of an image. I know, Rachel, you said you've had some of those exact experiences which you wouldn't anticipate, but that text can really outperform an image in certain areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Your format and your layout is definitely an easy one. Where your columns are, where your buttons are, where your calls to action are. I mean, yes, you want them above the fold, but maybe they work better here than here. Your offer, another easy split test, how you frame it, how you present it, how it's appealing to the reader, and that kind of goes hand in hand with your call to action. Same offer, same idea, same end result, but how you phrase it, how you frame it, how you present it to the viewer. A couple of things here that are pretty basic, but do allow you to do this more efficiently moving forward, is to track and log as much of your data, your time that you deployed your email, the date, your complaint rates, your opens, your click-throughs, your shares, all of this. As you look at this as a whole, it just simply allows you to be more effective moving forward. Continually testing will eventually help you to optimize and form your own best practices that are essentially suited to you and ideal for your organization and the message that you're delivering. Any questions on testing and optimization?
A quick tip on timing. Take a look at your website analytics. See when people are going to the website. See if there are specific days and times. That can be a good indicator of where to start when you're talking about when to send emails as well. Yep. It all depends on your audience. Yeah. I know people probably hate it when I say that, but it really just depends on your audience. I mean, we're sending out B2B emails, for our business, and so that doesn't always ring true for us. We found that Fridays are actually really great days. So you really have to test and see what works best. And, like I said, the website is a great place to look and see where to start testing. Yeah.
And a lot of times stats like that you see kind of correlate with, the things that most of us receive in our personal email boxes. On Monday mornings, I think they typically start flowing in at like 1 a.m. and they don't stop until about 8 or 9 a.m. And there's oftentimes I've got 20, 30 emails that I may be interested to open and to read, but not on a Monday morning. That's a really common time for that stuff to just start flowing in. The weekend's over, the work week has started. Let's have that shift in thought and in the message, and I think that's really common, and I think that's why Mondays and Fridays are often avoided. And same thing with Friday. You're moving out of that thought. You're getting back to the weekend. You're kind of over it. You're ready to think about something else. So, I know with us in particular, we do avoid those days unless there's an actual, an event or a time or a date that's approaching that's very crucial. But we do avoid those days in general.
Well, I'll give you a couple examples because I'm going to say it depends on your audience. But it's funny because I work with 2 online retailers. One, he gets probably 80% of his response in the first 3 days. I have another online retailer that he gets, and one is selling a cleaning supply and one is a hardware. They're selling like hardware stuff. And the hardware stuff guy, it takes probably 2 weeks. People will still buy 2 weeks from an email. I don't keep an email in my inbox for 2 days, 2 hours if I don't want it, right? Or if I don't need it right at that moment. But I mean, it is the craziest thing. I have never seen that before. So I would say anywhere from, when I'm talking about pulling like statistics and things too, I usually wait 10 days after that email goes out if I'm going to actually log the statistics. That's usually when I look. But when I send out an email, well, I'm a little obsessive, but I look right away, and then maybe like, half an hour, and then maybe a couple hours, and then I usually wait a couple more days. Yeah.
Anyone have any further questions at all on anything that we've covered? Yes, we can provide quite a bit of support to email initiatives, from design to copy to counsel on things such as deployment, dates, times, things like that.
I have a question for you. I'm part of Chad's team too. So the question is regarding email list rentals. Because I want to come back to that. So that's the thing, our marketing and also Jason. You were kind of saying that, okay, this not to go that route, but when you're in lead gen, you're generating leads for the students and all that. So that's one of the keys that we focus on. You segment your market accordingly. You focus on them, so let's say you want to go to all the niches and things like you do. That would be my first thing to do. It's like to find out, okay, who's here, whom I'm targeting, just send it out to them. So just want to talk about if you want to go that generate those leads, what are the alternatives beyond that?
So let me kind of back up, because there are companies that do it and that do it pretty well, right? That do that kind of thing for you, that send out some sort of opt-in message so that people can opt in, and then once they've opted in, then they can be sent to your regular email service provider. So I want to keep that as an open option, because I know that a lot of people get a lot of pressure for something like that, right? And I get that. But alternatives is just a lot slower. And so that's where people kind of run into that barrier, is, making sure that you have referral campaigns set up. So for your current subscribers, your current, your really engaged subscribers, give them some sort of incentive for sharing information about your school, because most likely I'm going to be friends with people like me that may also be interested. So that's a great way, whether that's through email or you can also co-promote that through Facebook. The big thing is everything has to work together. So social media, email, your print pieces, they all have to be aligned in that way. Yeah.
I have a question on just a better example of how the opt-in campaign would work. Like an example with us would be, we're getting ready to start a medical coding program. And so we've pulled, I guess you would say, our segmented database, which is within our school, students who recently finished our LPN program, a CNA course, a CMA course. So nursing, allied health specific. And we want to use them to see if they want to go ahead and get the certificate with us. So our first email, I guess, is it okay to send them that first email of their ties to Highland, but then you would end it with, do you want to continue to receive more medical coding information? And that would be your opt-in?
That's what I would do. Yeah. And I would use some sort of personalization. So because you received this degree, because you have this, we think this would be highly, a big interest. Please click here, and make sure it's not just, some clients will say, click here for more information and take that as your opt-in. Make sure it's very clear. Click here to find out more information about this program.
So sort of similar to if you're going to start touching a list again that's been very stagnant or just not touched at all for a long time, it's safe to kind of have that, it's that fail-safe, We know we can email you, but do you want to continue to receive this communication? And now it's maybe not about what we were talking to you the first time, that the message has shifted a little bit, but. All right, well, thank you all for joining, and everyone has successfully made it through Connect 2012, so we thank you all for being here, and hope to see you next year.